So by the end of this class, you should be pretty good at visual effects. And then you're probably gonna wanna show off your new skills on your reel and portfolio so that you can get work actually doing this stuff. One of the best ways to do that I know is to do before and after shots that you can put in a reel or just in your portfolio. As a motion designer and especially as a visual effects artist, your process is your product. So you need to show it off, and I'm gonna show you how. I thought that this shot from the lug nuts project would be a good case study for this because when you just look at it, it's fairly simple. You've got talent, you've got a car, and you've got a background with a little bit of type on it. But as you saw, it actually took quite a bit of work to get this to look the way it does, and there were a lot of decisions that had to be made. So what I wanna do is show the potential client that I'm capable of thinking like a visual effects artist and to give them a taste of the skill set that I bring to the table. Now, if you remember, this was the shot we started with and there was junk everywhere. There was quite a bit of cleanup that had to be done to make this usable, plus color correction and a whole bunch of other things, okay? So I wanna start with this shot and I want the client to see that this was the raw material. And so what I'd like to do is sort of start by showing them that shot and have all of the pieces of this composite sort of turn on one by one. And there's a lot of them. For example, I have a light wrap down here. And if I just click to turn that off, you can see that just that little edge light, it makes a difference in the composite and how believable this is. Client would never know it's there, so I could turn that on and off. There's also lots of layers down here that are creating these shadows that may not be obvious, right? If I turn this off, all of a sudden, it's not as interesting. So I kind of want to walk through step by step all the pieces of this composite, starting with the raw footage. Now, how could we do that? Well, the first thing I want to do is think about timing because this is going to be living inside of an edit. Now, this is a 6-second shot in total, and I may not use all of it in the reel, but I'm definitely going to want to spend at least maybe 2 to 3 seconds building this composite up so that I can really have each step sort of land for the client. So what I'm gonna do is start to rough out some timing and then we're just gonna see how it feels and go from there. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come into the keyed shot and I'm gonna grab a copy of the original footage. I'm gonna paste it into this main comp here and I'm gonna remove all of the masks and any effects because I wanna start with this raw shot, okay? And we're gonna be on this shot maybe for, I don't know, a second, and we're gonna sort of reveal that I've removed the green screen and all of this other stuff, and apparently we've also scaled the footage down, okay? So this can sort of be the first layer that we are revealing. And so probably the easiest way to do this, now that I'm thinking about it, is I'm gonna go to this right here, this end wide shot layer. This is actually the footage keyed out, masked, all that good stuff. And maybe what I could do is I could just put a keyframe here and here for position and scale. And then I can go back to the beginning, or maybe just go back like, I don't know, 10 frames or something like that, and reset both of those. So I can just open this up, go to transform, reset, and now they're full size. I'll just ease those for now. And you can see now this would be sort of the first part of the shot. And what I could do then is come in here and say, okay, well now I have until this point in time to basically key them out and show the client that I've done that. I wanna give myself a little bit more time, so I'm gonna scoot this forward like this. Then I'm gonna hop in here, and what I wanna do is basically reveal the fact that I've keyed this. And what I wanna do is basically, sort of wipe away the background or something like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate the footage, delete all the effects on it, delete all the masks, and I can just call this original. And I know that by this point, I want it to be totally wiped off. So I'm just gonna put a marker there. And I could just do something really, really simple. I could start with a mask, maybe over here, add a mask keyframe, and then come to the beginning and just do something like this. All right, so now, whew, there we go. I have showed the client that this was a pretty gnarly keying situation and I took care of it, okay? So I wiped that. Now there's also some color correction and stuff like that going on here. There is a spill suppressor on this. Now if I turn that off, that makes a pretty noticeable difference, right? So I sort of wanna draw attention to that too. So maybe, a couple frames after this, that's when we can actually show that there's a spill suppressor being used here. And I assume that there is also going to be one on the talent here. There is, okay? So what I'm going to do is I am going to say that before this frame, that spill suppressor does not exist, right? So all I did there, because this was an adjustment layer, is I just made it start at this frame. And on this layer here, what I can do is I can key the suppression amount, right? And so I could go back one frame and set this to 0. And now we're sort of wiping the green away, and then we're turning that on. Now, it's not a huge noticeable shift, but there's gonna be like 10 other steps, and it's gonna feel like, we're sort of building to something, okay? If I come back to this comp now, we start here now, there's a whole bunch of effects on here that are affecting the look of it that I don't actually want at this point in time, okay? And so I could sort of keyframe all of those, but an easy thing to do would just be come to this point and split the layer. Shift-Command-D splits the layer. And then on this first copy, I can just delete all that stuff. And so now we've got the raw shot, and there is a mask on it that I'm gonna want to delete as well. And we're sort of showing, look, I've keyed it, and there's some spill suppression, and then I moved it there. Okay, then what's gonna happen next? Well, how do we want that background to be revealed? Do we want it to show up behind this already? Probably not. We probably want some other interesting way to show that the background is sort of being assembled on. And so what we could do here is look at what are the layers that make up the background. So what I'm gonna do is just sort of turn off the graphics for a minute. So we just have the background to deal with. And I can also turn off the talent, and I'll turn off the shadow and all of this stuff. I just want to focus on this scene for a minute. There we go. And so I've got the fence and the cactus and some trees and stuff. I've got all of that like pretty handy. And then if I go to the background, I've got the rest of the stuff. So basically I'm just gonna put some simple keyframes on everything. I'm gonna grab the trees, and I could even do those one by one because there's only 3 of them. So let's do this. So let's do cactus, cacti, am I saying that right? And fence. And I'm gonna put position keyframes here. I'm gonna jump forward 10 frames, put another position keyframe. All right, and then I can just go one by one and say, okay, well that fence, I'm gonna want that to drop in from the sky. And then this cactus can maybe slide over from there, and then this cactus can maybe slide over from there. All right, just easy use those to make it easy. Of course, if you use Flow or if you know the graph editor, you can get in there and make these a little bit slicker. Then on top of that, we've got these trees, right? And so I'm gonna come here and set a marker, and then go back here, go to my next keyframe, pop in here, set a marker, just so the timing will match. So I'll put a position keyframe there, go back to this marker, and then I can just pull these all up like this so they sort of fall from the sky. And you could do this however you want. It's just making it a little bit more interesting for the client, right? The background builds on, see? Sort of showing the client that this didn't all magically appear. Now, what about the overall background? What about this? Well, the clouds are on their own layer, the ground texture is on its own layer, and you could basically just sort of build this up from scratch, which is another neat way of doing it. So let's look at the timing. We're gonna start here, and maybe we could start a few frames before. So I'll come here, I'm gonna set a marker, then I'll come to the end here, and maybe have it end a little bit before everything else does, set another marker there, okay? And then I'm just going to start with the clouds. So position, and then I'll go back to the original, and I'll just kind of have them float in from the top. The ground texture, I can just go forward a few frames and have it start on this frame, so it just appears. I could do the same thing with a lot of these layers, right? Just doing something very simple like this, helping it build on is gonna be nice. Now these things are probably gonna be some of the last things to appear, right? The hills, those could disappear, or they could sort of come up from the bottom, which might be more interesting. So why don't I try that? Why don't I do a position keyframe there, come forward a little bit, and have these sort of come up from the bottom, okay? And then we've got this atmosphere, which maybe that could sort of start there, and then this could start here, and then we go back a few frames and start there. And so you're basically building up this background like this in front of your client's eyes. And I'm just gonna play with the timing a little bit because I want it to sort of feel staggered and interesting. And let me go ahead and ease those. And now, if I turn all this stuff back on, right? It's not done yet, but we start here, we wipe, there's nothing there, it scales down, the background builds on, look at that. So you can see where this is going. You can see how this is starting to become a really clear case study for us. Like, oh, look at all of the things that Joey was able to do to make this work, okay? So once that background lands, I don't want things to stop, right? So then at that point, that's when I want all of these effects to start building on. Now, all of them are keyframeable. So what I'm gonna do is put a keyframe on each effect. Now, hue and saturation actually doesn't let you keyframe it, unfortunately, so we'll have to do something else for that, but I'm not too worried about that. Levels, you can keyframe the histogram, and advanced spill suppressor, we can adjust the suppression. And then I'm just gonna open all of these up. I'm gonna set these to hold keyframes, just so it's easier to kind of manipulate them. And then I'm gonna go back here, and I can just sort of reset all of these. So I can set this to 0, so there's no spill suppression. I can reset the levels, and on the curves, I can also reset the curves. All right, set these to hold keyframes. And so now, once this lands, maybe right about there, the curves can activate, boom. And then a few frames later, maybe the levels. And that's not really doing much, so then we'll also do the advanced spill suppressor, which also doesn't seem to make a huge difference, probably because it's already being suppressed in the previous comp. All right, but you can see that now it sort of shows that color correction as a step. And so maybe I'll delay that a little bit, just so you really kind of see it, and then it pops when it turns on, boom, like that. Now the hue and saturation, does that make a big difference? It doesn't make that big of a difference, but there's a little one. So what I could do here is just split this layer one more time, and on this version, just delete the hue and saturation effect. And then when this hits, boom, now that turns on, okay? And then we've got some extra layers that need to turn on too. So we've got these shadows here that need to turn on, and so I can just sort of stagger the timing of those, right? So maybe right in there, you can sort of have one then the other, like boom, 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 boom. And then you've got this contact shadow with the car, right? So that could sort of come on maybe there. Cool. We've got this light wrap at the end, right? So for that, I want that to kind of pop on later, right? So look at all of the things that we're showing now. Boom. All right, and then the light wrap turns on. Let's have the light wrap turn on a little sooner. Okay, and we've also still got the bug and the logo lockup that needs to appear. And so for that, we could just do something simple, right? So maybe like right around there, we could have the bug just sort of move on screen, do something simple, right? Just move in from the side. And for the logo lockup, maybe we can do something a little bit fancier. And we could maybe have that start there. And maybe just do like a little pop on or something like that, right? So a little trick I like to do sometimes, especially since everything's sort of like jumping on and cutting on in this really kind of quick cutty way, we could just do something like this where you could put like a hold keyframe on scale and just have it, and let me make sure the anchor point's in the right place or this won't actually work. And just scale it up really big like this, and then go forward 2 frames, maybe go down to like 90%, forward 2 frames, up to 100. And you'll just get this nice little boom, there it is. And other than that, there was this nice shadow layer, and I don't think Mark actually used it, but I kind of like it. I think it was this one. And I'm just gonna turn this thing way down, and I'm gonna use that as an additional layer that can turn on, right? And so now you've got this whole thing sort of building on and scaling down, and then the background, and then all that. I think I'm gonna have the logo come in last. Right, there you go. And then you've got a nice little breakdown shot. Now we're gonna do a RAM preview and see what this looks like. Cool, so you can see this does a decent job of sort of showing from where we started, a bunch of the steps involved. And even if a client has no idea how any of this was done or what those steps are called or what a light wrap is, they can tell that there was a lot of work that went into making this work really well. And you can play with the timing of how these effects sort of build on. And you can see that this did not take very long. And if you're gonna add visual effects into your toolkit, doing even 3 or 4 of these and putting them in your reel is going to go a long way towards showing people that, yeah, you actually know what you're doing, and it's not just one-click keys and and slapping a foreground on a background. You've actually done a lot of work to integrate all these things. So hopefully that looked pretty easy, and you saw how quickly we were able to put that shot together. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it's going to be really, really helpful to show clients that you actually know what you're doing and you didn't just get lucky and have a really nicely shot key. So that's it. I hope you learned a lot in this lesson, and good luck with the rest of the class.